Now listen here, Mr. Drill, cause I'm singing this while I'm plastered. All your minions are crook and the worst ones all look like you robot My history with Skylanders Giants was pretty painful. After buying the booster pack, also known as the Portal Owners pack on release day, I was almost immediately disappointed. Not because I'd scuffed T-Rex while trying to get him out of the box, which isn't any easier, Activision! He's a big boy.
God, you're weird, aren't you? I mean, you're really weird.
It was because I had so many conflicting opinions about the game and its Giants gimmick during the short time I played with them. Now that I've had time to mull over the information and play the game through to completion, I've built up a greater respect for Giants. It introduced the idea of core Skylanders, which at the time would have just been non-Giants, but later that would be any character that had no gimmicks outside of their element. There were also light core Skylanders which lit up, one of which you would have seen in my previous review. There was a single light core Skylander of each element, although the Giants themselves had parts that lit up as well. Plus he had reposes of 24 of the Spyro's adventure characters, which are both backwards and forwards compatible. The Notion of Figure series also debuted with Giants. SA Figures are Series 1 and Reposes and Giants are Series 2, and their respective green and orange bases help players to identify which game they're from. In terms of what new characters were added, a total of 16 were welcomed to the Skylanders gang, 8 cores and 8 Giants, one of which for every element. Your starter pack came with Jetvac, a remodel of Cinder and T-Rex, but players who already owned Skylanders Spyro's Adventure had the choice of the booster pack, costing only £40. This gave you the game and T-Rex, saving you the cost of another portal, and you'd already have 3 figures from the previous games. Like SA, I will be going over all 3 characters you get in the starter pack, so not to let anyone feel left out. Unless you bought the 3DS version, I don't have that. But what I do have is a higher appreciation of the game's story! Or should I say, Giants appreciation? Anyway, now how's that for a segue? Giants tells the story of the Archaean dynasty, how it fell, and how Chaos intends to bring it back for his own personal gain. The Giants were the first Skylanders and the only beings able to stand a chance against the evil Archaean race, which made only a brief appearance towards the end of the previous game. It turns out these cryptic contraptions were once a force of good, protecting Skylands from the darkness, but their lust for combining tech and magic turned them into warmongers and dictators. In a battle that took place 10,000 years before current events, the Giants had removed the Iron Fist... No, not that Iron Fist! Of Arcus from the Archaean King, preventing any more Concatrons and other baddies from being built. From that day, the Archaean Empire fell dormant, but not before the Iron Fist... Not that one, scattered the Giants far from Skylands, and back to Earth. You'd think the darkness, no, not that kind, would have learnt not to do that by now. It also makes me wonder how years in Skylands compare to ours. I mean, 10,000 years is a pretty long time. You'd think T-Rex and co would have got a bit of dust on them before being discovered on Earth, but they're in pretty good nick. Speaking of which, let's talk about the Giant figures, because they don't sell themselves particularly well in the opening cutscene. The toys are absolutely smashing and set the bar for how durable these figures should be. Originally sold for £15 at most, you can now get these for anywhere between £1.50 and £4 depending on where you look, but rare ones like Ningini or Thumbback can run you up to a tenner or more. Compared to ordinary figures, they're not so much giants as slightly taller, but I don't think that's as marketable. Plus, they light up when placed near or on the Portal of Power, which sort of makes up for the higher cost. In terms of gameplay, giants weren't particularly appealing to me at first. Compared to core Skylanders, they're half the speed at double the price, but when enemies don't like picking on someone their own size, you've got to be the bigger man. Or whale.
Hail to the whale!
Giants are cumbersome and unwieldy to the point where even turning around to target an enemy will make your hair turn grey. However, if you so much as tap a smaller character with your big toe, you'll send them flying! And that's where the fun of Giants comes in. If you want to smash open crates by walking into them, or hurl boulders at distant enemies, or have a health pool so large it's more like an ocean, play a Giant.
Bring the sting!
After all, you can't pick on someone your own size if there's no one to match it. And like any other Skylander, they have their own talent trees and start out with 2 abilities before being able to purchase a third. T-Rex, for example, can smash foes with his fists, charge at them, and can later fire upon them with his glowy knuckle thing. Giants have soul gems like any other character, although only the brand new characters have their soul gems in this game. If you want the soul gems of riposed characters, you've got to play Spyro's Adventure. To make up for this though, characters from the aforementioned title and riposers in this one have wow pow moves. This is just an extra something in case you maxed out your progression on the old characters and you got some spare change that's burning a hole in your pocket. Speaking of progression, every character can now level up to 15 in Giants, so you'll still be able to reap the rewards of playing golden oldies and new favourites. Oh, and the higher the difficulty you play on, the more XP and gold you can earn. So if you're like me and you found Spyro's Adventure to be a bit too easy, you can now bump up how much damage enemies do to you. Getting back to the Giants characters though, there's little they can't do that other Skylanders can. That was a problem for me in 2012 because I had no incentive to try out other characters, though the money I saved with the booster pack could have gone towards at least 2 new characters. Remember that internal conflict I was on about earlier? Well, this is where it began. On the one hand, I didn't need the other giant figures, so I didn't see any point in getting them. On the other hand, I loved their looks and moves, yet I couldn't stand how slowly they moved. As far as I was concerned, I could complete the entire story of Skylanders Giants with T-Rex, just as I could complete Spyro's Adventure with a titular character, Trigger Happy and Gill Grunt before. My narrow mind and tight fists had cost me more than I'd saved, because I didn't need another figure, because I was unwilling to have fun. I just got shut of the game. Sad really, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Giants have few uses out of the combat. They can break open barricades, pull floating islands close, or make bridges out of conveniently placed blocks, all of which normally lead to a treasure chest. I like that they have this helping hand style of play, that there's something for the smaller Skylanders to hide behind or call upon when things get too much, and I'm sure that will appeal to children having a tough time with the game. But their potential is never truly matched. They're useless in a boss battle due to their lack of mobility, and I'm shocked that they don't have their own kaiju-style fights. Even if it was on the Dread Yacht, the game's new hub, I wouldn't mind seeing T-Rex having an arm wrestle with someone on deck like Crusher or Swarm. It doesn't help either that the Giants are mostly kept to the wayside after the opening cutscene. It's more about the cast of new and returning characters than you as the Skylander. Everyone seems as flat as Flynn with their own catchphrase or gimmick. Emmett is paranoid about clouds, Brock is a fight promoter, Dreadbeard is a pirate. It all gets tired pretty quickly. It's as though Chaos is leading the story, with us following him and his loyal Concatron more than us chasing them. Without Hugo telling us our next objective or the elemental thingamajigs, the story feels like it's drifting lazily behind the villain. At least the other 2 characters in the starter pack make things a little racier. Damn, that's another fist-fantastic segue! I'm sure you're all aware of Cinder, once an antagonist turned ally in the Legend of Spyro trilogy, who also joined Spyro in the previous game. Like her TLOS self, this undead Skylander harnesses the power of shadow magic and lightning in a sustained primary attack. She can also burrow underground and dash forward, leaving behind a trail of friendly ghosts to damage all who walk near them. You can't go wrong with Cinder. Both talent trees make her a force to be reckoned with, such as enhancing the duration and length of a lightning breath or raising hell by raising more ghostly allies. And because she's a dragon, she can later purchase the ability to glide, increasing her speed and armor. Turning on the spot is still something of a pain, but it's extra mobility, so I can't complain all that much. Jetvac on the other hand shows how much Toys for Bob have learnt about making abilities synergize. On the surface he seems quite gimmicky with the ability to suck and blow enemies away with his vacuum. Launching gusts of air at enemies does a fair bit of damage and doesn't cost the resource he uses, and when he sucks up small opponents he can rocket them back at their friends. Our eagle-eyed bird brain of the air element may also learn how to hover like Cinder, but this costs him suction power. This resource can be generated slowly over time, or simply by using his vacuum ability to get an almost instant refuel. He's a bit ploddy, but he doesn't feel as heavy as his Gilman counterpart, Gill Grunt. Plus the jetpack is a lot easier to control than the water thrusters. Should you decide to get the starter pack without additional figures, you won't be disappointed. Unless you prefer melee combat over range, but it's not like Spyro's Adventure had much of that either. There are times in combat where this doesn't matter. Giants is really lazy with its enemy design. The primary antagonists are supposed to be the Archaeans, but you see them for, what, less than a quarter of the game's chapters? The other 3/4 of the game are filled with Chompies or Cyclopses, with the odd troll or drove for the sake of variety. Or there'd be variety if so many battles didn't involve invulnerability. Skylanders Giants is full of enemies that are invincible when attacking. Some will spin around in a circle, some will charge, but the point is that they can't be damaged so long as they're doing their move. It brings the fight to a standstill, and it's far too common to be ignored. So I prefer Spyro's Adventure for the fights. Some of them may have been easy or dire at worst, but at least you were active during them. The game offers you a light reprieve from the action with a mini-game called Skystone Smash, a simple and incredibly addictive board game I would have gladly paid 40 quid for on its own. Any chance we can get a take-home edition, Activision? It's pretty simple. You have 2 players placing a single stone per turn until all 9 places are taken up. You can take the other player's Sky Stone if you have more spikes than the card next to, above or below theirs. Likewise, the enemy can do the same to you and hijack your stone, and a tie results in your defeat. There's no defense or offense, you're played the hand you're dealt, which you're mostly in control of. You can earn Sky Stones by beating other NPCs located in the world, or Dreadbeard on the Dreadyacht. Oh, and you can purchase them from that Moneybags wannabe, Auric. Don't expect many advanced strategies, and with this being a Skylanders game and all, don't expect much from the cards using the element mechanic either. Placing a card that doesn't have that slot's element will turn it into stone, even though the cards are stone because it's Sky Stones, or whatever, but by matching the card and the slot, it lives to fight another turn. Sacrificing a space on the board can be useful to box in cards you've earned or keep enemy cards at bay. It's not a tactic you'll get to use much, but it's there if you want it. I personally think the game's better without that and just let us duke it out with spiky stones. My only complaint would be the length of the matches. They're quick, but not as quick as they could be. I've not noticed any way to speed up the animations. When you take another card, the picture becomes 3D, throws a wobbly, and then you claim your prize. Being able to skip all of this would make this all the better, and that's hard to imagine when it's as fun as it is. And if Sky Stones isn't your cup of tea, there's always Brock's Arena or Callie's Heroic Challenges. Like many characters aboard Flynn's ship, Brock joins after defeating him to test your mettle in a punch-up. His challenges award XP and gold, because apparently there's not enough of that on medium plus difficulties. I didn't participate in these much, nor would I in other sequels that don't exist yet, purely because they're too long. The thrill of moving the story along is where I get my kicks in. And get my head kicked in too. And finally, there's customizing the Dreadyacht with parts you can find in the world. In Spyro's Adventure, there were these bits of loot that could net you a few hundred gold, but in addition to that, Giants has parts that make your ship look fancy in cutscenes. Like Sky Stones, these legendary treasures provide a boost to the collectability of the game and give you even further reason to go back, especially if you've completed it and are going back on Nightmare difficulty.
You don't stay in Skylander, even though you wore that round. Cause the power won't drop and the killer won't stop until the city of Totes is found.
Oh, will you shut it, Mr. Drill? I'm tired of your talking back. Cause while I'm making this show, my viewers must know about the graphics and soundtrack. I'm not a fan of this game's art style. While the camera and objects make things clearer, the textures are muddy and the crisp details are gone. Giants looks mustier than Spyro's Adventure, especially on the character models that had a gloss to them. But the use of colour is amazing, especially in the UI and particle effects. You're treated to liberal splashes of bright lights and explosions of deep hues. The figures are kinda the opposite though. Toys for Bob also have a much better idea of how much they wanted these characters to turn out with the colour and light touches. The details, especially those of hair and feathers, are far better than those of Spyro's Adventure. If I had to recommend any new versions of the classic characters, I'd point you to most of the Giants remodels. Plus the new Series 1 figures aren't too shabby themselves, Jetvac in particular. And finally, the soundtrack. I didn't get quite as excited to hear the music as I did in the other game, but it does a good enough job of setting the scene for each level without getting tired. Oh, and the voice acting is kicked up a notch, quality stuff there. Glad to see everyone taking their roles seriously. Or as seriously as they should.
What did you do, Skylander? You just won the final round. I can't keep the beat or behind the beat, and my systems are all shutting down.
That's what you get, Mr. Drill, cause they say the first fight that I fought. But before I scrap you, I've got one last thing to do, and that's give my final thoughts. Originally, I felt Skylanders Giants was more of the same, and it's tempting for me to stick to that mindset. But I can't. I just can't. Because it's more than that, for better or for worse. In terms of gameplay, it's what you'd expect from Skylanders, only the enemies don't quite evolve with the new characters and playstyles. Rather, they find lazier ways to pose a threat, such as greater healing abilities, multiple waves, and invulnerability. That's on top of the increased number of block and beam puzzles in the level, where these were normally brain teasers and heroic challenges or elemental gates. They're now a huge part of the standard level design, and barely any of it's clever. The thing is, the game doesn't need to be any longer. It's a good 16 to 20 hours, the same as Spyro's Adventure, and that's not counting the extra nuggets of joy you can get out of the arena, heroic challenges, sky stones, and elemental zones. The plot has a great intro and a fantastic climax, but everything in between drags its heels, and I wanted it to be over just past the halfway point. If you collect the story scrolls throughout the game though, you can learn so much about the arcane history and culture, and have a jolly good time with it too. Just a shame they don't ever refer to Chop Chop, you know, the arcane character you can play as. But now I must face my demons. What is my final verdict on the Giants? They lack good exclusive content, they take the mickey we needed to swap them out all the time, and they trivialise the combat. But I love them. If there were any Skylanders I'd want to collect, the Giants figures are what I'm after, and when people tell me to grow up, I can show them that I have. Not like that, you dirty